Hello everybody, my name's James, and on this short piece of content I'm going to try and give you an update on my current understanding of the rules for FIFA World Cup Fantasy. Unfortunately, we recorded a podcast on Thursday with, I think, some really helpful stuff on player pricing and strategy. Unfortunately, a lot of that strategy needs binning. I said I was 99.9% sure of the rules, and I can tell you that I was 99.9% incorrect. Certainly in no way was anyone meant to be misled, and that's part why I'm recording this piece of audio and this short piece of video now on YouTube to try and give people an update of what's happening. Excuse me. So my understanding of the rules on Thursday, which you could do several things such as change captain every day, as has been common in UCL Fantasy. That's not the case. What I'm going to try and do on this piece of content is take you through quite slowly. I'm not going to be answering any questions or anything like that. This is all pre-recorded. Take you through what's changed and now the clarification we've got. Firstly, must give a shout out to Andy Mears of Let's Talk FPL, who's done some brilliant investigative work. Yesterday, he was approached by someone claiming to work on the game who emailed him a set of information saying that the rules were all wrong and they're all going to change, basically. And that's what's happened. Andy's done a brilliant video, which I've linked into the bio of this, with his understanding of the rules. If you've already seen that video, I'll be very honest, you probably don't need to watch or listen to this one. But I'm aware not everybody is on social media and won't have access to the information. So that's the main reason why I'm pre-recording this. Andy is certainly worth a follow on Twitter. He will update if he gets any more information. There's a couple of things that still need clarifying. I know FPL Harry's doing some great investigative work, and Adam and Baker from Above Average FPL will certainly be on the case as well with what's going on. So I just want to take you through the new understanding of what's changed with the rules as we see it from now. Okay, you can only have a maximum of 2 captain selections during any single match day. Each team's first game is match day 1. So once everybody's played their first game, then it goes on to match day 2. Once everyone's completed their second game, it goes on to match day 3. You can only have 2 captain selections. So when we said on Thursday, our understanding was that the very poorly worded statement of you can move your captain once more and then once more on again was incorrect. You can only change your captain once. You can in the build-up, and on Monday before, say if you captain Messi on Tuesday morning, you can change it 100 times on Monday before Messi plays if you want. But if you captain Messi on Tuesday morning, that's it. You can change once more and once more only. You can, however, change to a player on the same day. So I will tell you my example of my intention right now is to captain Lionel Messi on Tuesday morning. Now, should Messi blank, I'm going to move that captaincy most likely to Kylian Mbappe on Tuesday evening when France play Australia instead. Should Messi return, say get a 7-pointer if he scores and gets the 2 appearance points, then that's it. I'm going to either leave it or I'm going to gamble and move it. I'll probably still move it, to be honest. If obviously Messi scores a couple, I'll probably just leave it. If Messi scores, let's say 7 points, and you captain him, times 2 is 14 points. If you leave it, that's what you've got. Don't move your captain again. If you change to move it to Mbappe, you will keep Messi's original 7 points, but obviously not the doubled points. You will keep Messi's 7, and then Mbappe is your new captain as I go along. I hope most of this makes sense. So it can be changed on the same day, but only once in a match day. Hopefully that gives some clarity on captains. It doesn't have to be the same day. Of course, you can captain Mbappe on Tuesday night and move it to Kevin De Bruyne on Wednesday, for example. Substitutes. So you can bring in a substitute if he has not played for a player who has played at any time. However, you will lose the original points scored by the player. You substitute and the change cannot be reversed. So again, let's give you an example. I'm just going to use the same players again. Let's say you leave Mbappe on the bench. You wouldn't, but I'm just going to use the same players for the example. So let's say you have Messi. He's against Saudi Arabia. He gets booked. He does nothing. 1 point. You decide to sub him out of your team and bring Mbappe in later that day. You can do that as long as it's before France has kicked off that day. Recommendation here in almost all cases, if you can, wait for the team sheet. Make sure that your substitute is actually in the team lineup. If you remove Messi from the team, you will lose the 1 point. That no longer exists. Once at the end of the game, the player sat on your bench, you no longer have the points. If you remove Messi, you cannot bring him back into the team. Probably a really bad example. This is something you're more likely to do, I think, with players who are more likely to blank. Messi's probably unlikely to do so on Tuesday. Okay, let's talk about chips a little bit. So, the wildcard chip allows for unlimited transfers in a match day. If our understanding, and I have to say if our understanding of the rules is correct, then the best options look to be to use it in match day 2 or the quarterfinals. I'm going to give a full explanation of why that's the case when I talk about transfers a little bit later on. The 12th man chip allows you to select one additional player in one match day. The 12th man cannot be substituted, captained or transferred. My recommendation is get a premium player in match day 1 who you won't captain. That's what I intend to do. So on my current strategy, captaincy, as I said, for me, is probably going to be Messi Tuesday morning. And if I want to move it to Mbappe Tuesday night, that's what I'm going to do. So I think, as there's obviously unlimited budget on the 12th man, it's a player that you want to get in. Your confidence is going to do well, but you don't want to captain. So I think ideal scenario, 2 players that spring to mind, probably Harry Kane and Neymar, for example, if you're not starting with either of them. My probable philosophy on this is probably just going to go with Harry Kane on Monday. The boosts need to be activated before a match week starts. So you can't decide on Monday morning, oh, I'm going to go 12th man and put Harry Kane in. You will have to activate the boost for that before the match week starts. So before Qatar and Ecuador kick off tomorrow. My understanding is once you select that 12th man, you cannot change it, which is really, really obviously important. So again, it might be more beneficial to go with, say, Harry Kane on Monday rather than Neymar playing on Thursday, because Neymar could pick up an injury in training. You're just, let's say, lessening the potential problem of what could happen is what I would suggest. So I think ideally as well, premium player that you don't intend to captain quite early in the week. If you want to use it in match day 2, for example, the one I used on Thursday as an analogy is perhaps Robert Lewandowski against Saudi Arabia. But as we're going to come on to, I think many of us are going to end up wildcarding in match day 2 as it looks currently. The power captain, this is kind of very much unchanged from what I said on Thursday, will allow you to get double points from whichever player scores the most points in your team for the selected match day. A recommendation again is to use it later in the knockout stage of the tournament. Obviously now, there's what I'd explained on Thursday was you've got more chance of hitting the captain in the group stages. That's obviously now no longer the case. You've only got 2 choices. But the choices of player you can pick versus the quality of opposition is likely to be better in the group stage. Therefore, I think more chances of obviously hitting that captain correctly. Once you get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, third, fourth and final, it's probably more difficult to obviously actually nail a captaincy choice. So I think you're better off using it later in the tournament when really you're there going, oh, I'm not sure who to captain here, basically. And it probably still will be the premium players, but I'd probably recommend holding that chip for later in the tournament. As it stands, I would have nothing set in my mind for when that would be. I explained on Thursday's pod the idea of, you know, if Mbappe's playing Iran in the quarterfinals, I might think, oh, I'm not going to do it now, I'm going to do it in the semi-finals. So I think later in the tournament, you don't need to be locked into exactly when that will be at the moment. On transfers, all fantasy managers will receive unlimited transfers ahead of the round of 16. How many transfers given at each stage of the tournament is as follows. So match day 1, you have 2 transfers. Match day 2 and 3, also 2 transfers. The round of 16, you have 4 transfers. Quarterfinals 5, semi-finals 5, third and fourth place playoff, and the final, the third and fourth place playoff does count, as we'd said on Thursday, 6 transfers. Quite how that's going to work for the third and fourth place playoff and the final, I think we'll deal with that a little later in the tournament, I think. But probably at that stage, it's probably going to be, oh, the player I've got's not starting, changing for someone else. Is probably going to be the more likely case, because I don't know if you're going to be able to remove a player from the third, fourth place playoff for the final, because the rules would stipulate it doesn't count to the next round, but then the final, there is no next round. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work as yet. So the 2 transfers that you can use in the match day 1 obviously, we're all on unlimited before the tournament kicks off. So the 2 transfers are physically for within the match week. So let me give you an example. I'm potentially going to take a punt possibly on Kingsley Coman of France, who's 8 million. And I think what this allows is the potential to be able to take 1 or 2 more punts. Now, I, at this stage, have no idea if Coman is going to start or not, but could be a really good option, I think, if he does. Now, if I see the France team on Tuesday night and he's not in the starting lineup, I can use, obviously, one of my free transfers. Rather than having to bring a substitute directly in for him, I can make one of my free transfers then before France kick off to buy another player. So I might decide to go and take a punt on Sarabia of Spain later in the week, or Eden Hazard of Belgium. As long as it's a player that hasn't played yet in that game week, move it on to someone else. One of the things that a few people have been discussing on Twitter, and we're trying to get to the bottom to, and at the time of recording, I don't have the information to share with you, is whether there's a loophole here where you can use the 2 free transfers to get an extra premium player. Allow me to give you an example. Let's say you have Lionel Messi playing in your team and you want to get to Kevin De Bruyne. Right, well, once a player's locked, you basically, if you bring in an unlocked player, a player who hasn't played yet, then that transfer doesn't become active till the next round of matches. But can you, and I don't know the answer to this currently, can you move Messi to a 4.5 million forward of your choice who hasn't played yet and therefore would become active for the next game week, and move a 4.5 million midfielder, again, who it would have to be who hasn't played yet, to Kevin De Bruyne? What we don't know is once you make the first move of moving Messi, who will have already played, to a 4.5 million forward as an example, what we don't know is if that's going to allow you the funds or not to make the second move. If it does, it's a huge loophole. And if you use 12th man in the first week, essentially you can get every premium player in the game basically for match day 1. We don't know at the moment if that's going to work. What I'd suggest is let someone else experiment with the game to find out if it does or it doesn't. I know there's a few people right now considering setting up second accounts within the FIFA game and are going to try and use it on Sunday and Monday for sort of teams they don't care about to see if it works or not, so we have the understanding come Tuesday and Wednesday if you can make that sort of move or not. My intention right now is not to go down that sort of route of play, but there's plenty who will consider it and do it if it's a possibility. Right now I can't give you the clarity. All I can tell you is, from my understanding, it's a possibility. Transfer allocations can be exceeded, so if you obviously have the 2 free transfers match day 1, you decide you want to use a third, you can. But it will cost you a points hit as it would do in FPL, difference being it will cost you -3 rather than a -4. Any player who has not yet played in a match day who is transferred in for a player who has also not yet played in a match day will start scoring points instantly. Transfers can be made during the match day. So the example I've already given, I picked Kingsley Coman. He's not in the French team Tuesday night. I move it before France kick off to Eden Hazard, who plays the next day. I will score Eden Hazard's points in that game week. I obviously won't score Kingsley Coman's points if he comes off the bench because I've transferred him out. But because the player I'm bringing in hasn't played yet and the player I'd be selling won't have played yet, I can make my transfer. However, if you transfer in a player for someone who has already played in a match day, then your new player will not start scoring points until the following match day. So let me use the same example. Let's say Kingsley Coman is left out of the French team and I don't make the transfer until France have kicked off and I move to Eden Hazard. Eden Hazard won't score me points until the following match day. So he won't score me points until Belgium's second game in match day 2. What this all leads to is the idea very much of using that wildcard chip in match day 2. And I explained the reason why, and Andy checked this, and you can see this on Andy's timeline on Twitter, where he screenshotted the DM with the person who was giving him the information to clarify if his understanding was correct. Essentially, when match day 1 finishes, you can activate your wild card for match day 2. You pick your 11 players you want, get them in, off you go for match day 2. During the course of match day 2, you start selling players once they've played and start buying in the players you want for match day 3. And essentially, what you've now got is 3 free hits. A free hit from the unlimited in match day 1, a free hit for match day 2 on the wild card, and you set up for match day 3 before the final game of Uruguay and Portugal finishes in match day 2. Makes sense? It's difficult to follow. Let's be honest. This is a really, really bad game, and I recommend different formats. I'm going to continue playing because I said I'd play, but it's a little bit of a mess, let's be honest. What I don't know at this point, and I've myself approached Andy and asked him to try and get clarification on this, if those transfers for match day 3 will have to be locked in before Uruguay and Portugal kick off. Because one of the stipulations in the rules is you can't move a player while he's playing. You have to wait till he's finished. So in the case where we've said about Messi and Mbappe, let's just say Messi gets injured after 15 minutes and gets substituted and he scores, he blanks basically, and you want to move it to Mbappe. You can't move it till the Argentina game's finished. So that's why I'm trying to seek clarity on what it may mean for Uruguay and Portugal players, because they're the last game in match day 2, what that would mean for them going into match day 3. Again, once we've got that information ahead of that period, if that's what the majority intend to do, and it's currently the way the rules look like, I think what most of us should do, then we'll obviously advise on that once we've got the information. It's not something you need to know either way right now. You could alternatively use the wild card in a similar way for the quarterfinals, where you essentially then have a free hit for the last 16, free hit for the quarterfinals, and a free hit for the semi-finals. But I suspect if most of the favourites win the quarterfinals, you'll probably end up winning a similar team for the semi-finals anyway. Whereas match day 3 obviously could have a lot of rotation. If teams are already through, we can try and work on that sort of thing and advise nearer then. So I think it would be better used in match day 2. But essentially, they've completely bollocksed up the format of the game that allows you to manipulate it. And one of the ways of manipulating it is to use the wild card in match day 2. Now, if that circumstance changes, I'll go back to what I'd wanted to do, where they clarify and say you can't do that. I'll go back to what I said I wanted to do on Thursday's pod, which is wild carding in match day 3 and use it as a free hit. That would be my intention. But right now, if that loophole exists, where you can basically get your free hit team set for match day 3 on unlimited transfers, it seems to make complete sense that you would do so in that way. Some difference in scoring from FPL. Just to clarify, there's a couple of bits I missed out on Thursday, so I just want to clarify these. +2, if your player wins a penalty, that penalty does not have to be converted. Your player will also score -1 if they concede a penalty. Goalkeepers get +5 for a clean sheet, as we'd said on Thursday. They must play 70 minutes. In the knockout stages, extra time does count. Your goalkeeper, for example, would have to keep the clean sheet for the full 120 minutes if the game ended 0-0. What I didn't mention on Thursday is quite important, is each additional goal conceded by a goalkeeper or defender would be a -1. So let's give the example that you go with Alphonso Davies of Canada against Belgium. So let's say they start on a basic 2 points, they lose 4-0. You're looking at a -2. And because that's quite late in the week, it might be a more difficult one to remove for a substitute. So the piece of advice here would be is don't gamble, and you can gamble on Davies because he doesn't go last. But for example, you wouldn't want to gamble on someone playing in Group H, I think, from a team who is liable potentially to concede a lot of goals. Sorry to use Canada as the example there. Also, 5 points for clean sheets for defenders rather than 4 points. That's the same as FPL in terms of 60 minutes or more. Again, knockout stages, extra time will count. Goal scored by a goalkeeper is 9 points. A goal scored by a defender is 7. It's big. Midfielders will get +1 for every 2 key passes completed. They will also get +1 for every 3 tackles completed. Forwards will score 5 points for a goal scored, which is the same as midfielders, and they will also get another +1 for 2 shots on target. Let me run you through my current draft just briefly. So what I intend to go with, and for benefit of those on YouTube, you can see it in the top right hand corner. Goalkeepers, Sanchez of Spain, 5 million, and Costa Portugal, 5 million. Neither are certain starters. I do think they'll both start. I think what I've learned from UCL Fantasy is don't scrimp and save on the goalkeepers. And the theory behind that is essentially you've got 4 substitutes that you can bring on to improve the scoring of your team. One of them is highly likely to be a goalkeeper. If your goalkeeper concedes, you're definitely changing goalkeeper. So I'd like 2 good chances at a potential clean sheet, and I think they're both very reasonably priced at 5 million. So my intention is to go with those 2. Defenders, pretty much all players that I recommended very much on Thursday's pod. So I think Denzel Dumfries of Holland is worth paying the extra over some slightly cheaper options within the 2 teams. I think the 7 points for a goal defensively means you really want to target these players defensively who are capable of scoring goals. Kieran Trippier of England, Nicolas Otamendi of Argentina, Joachim Maley of Denmark, I said on Thursday, I think it's the best 4.5 in the game, and Sosa Croatia's 3.5. For the benefit of those on YouTube, Sosa has an asterisk next to his name, and I've just highlighted that to show that he's currently going to sit as my substitute, basically, or one of, and the same applies for 2 players who've got asterisks on page 2. So, actually, that's wrong. It should be Jeremy Musiala rather than Coman. But I'm going to gamble on Coman, I think. And I'm not saying I'm locked into that, but I might take a gamble. I think at 8 million, if he starts, that's not too bad. Jamal Musiala is a great option. Germany, 8 million. Yuri Tielemans has kind of become filler at the moment as 7 million options. Steven Bergwijn's in, and Skov Olsen of Denmark, I mentioned a lot on Thursdays, in for me at the moment as well. Forwards, Mbappe, Messi, and at 8 million, I really like Lautaro Martinez. If the De Bruyne loophole works, and I'm not in a position, say Coman starts for France and I'm happy, then I could potentially look at moving perhaps Tielemans to De Bruyne and moving something else downwards. But my intention is not to play the game that way if the loophole exists. The wording on the website is still shit. It's not been proofread, nothing. There are clear grammar errors in there, and I'm not a grammar expert, but there are instances where it says like your twice in a row. It's been rushed. It's bog standard. They've cocked up the game. It's not great, be honest. My advice, honestly, if you haven't set up the team for FIFA World Cup Fantasy yet, is if you're in the UK, definitely play Sky. All right, it's free to enter. You have to open a Sky Bet account, yes, but it's 10 grand to the winner. Also, highly recommend the Gaffer format, which has got lots of chips and boosters, which will keep you engaged throughout the tournament, I think, even if you have a bad start. And that's a growing game, and I'd very much rather support that than this, to be honest. I'm carrying on with this because I've committed to covering it. In terms of Gaffer info, by the way, I'd very much recommend the EFL podcast done by Jamie Angus and Daniel. Those guys are on the case in terms of how the Gaffer game works. Right, I think that's it. Just before I finish, rundown of what we've got coming up. So we've got 6 watch-alongs during the all this week coming up for advanced and intermediate tier patrons. Myself and Suj will be doing Senegal and Holland on Monday on Patreon. That's going to be straight after England against Iran. On Tuesday, Peter Featherstone from FPL.team, which is a brilliant planning website for FPL if you've not been on it before. He's going to be joining me in our office in Barnet to watch Argentina and Saudi Arabia. On Wednesday, Clayton Fernandez from the AFC Bite Size podcast. Yes, I'm going to invite Aguna in. He's going to be joining me to watch Germany and Japan on Wednesday. I will try and limit the Arsenal chat if I can. On Thursday, Nico, the video editor, in case you didn't know, he's Portuguese. He's going to be sitting down and watching Portugal and Ghana with me on Thursday, and he'll probably be suing and other nonsense stuff. On Friday, Adam Pritchard, our Arsenal correspondent, will be joining me for Wales and Iran. If you didn't know, Adam's quite Welsh, actually. He's very much looking forward to joining me for that one. And the following Monday, Suj again will be joining me on the Monday to do Brazil versus Switzerland at 4 p.m. on that Monday. What we're going to do up for content after that, we haven't quite decided yet. For our regular free content, join me this week for Breakfast with James, which will be at 8 a.m. All this week, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. streams, and it will be on the Monday the following week as well. Well, we've got these 10 a.m. kickoffs. I'm going to do some streams in the morning. So if people want to come and ask me, honestly, World Cup Fantasy questions, Gaffer, Sky, or please, just general football questions, that'll be great. Stream about half hour, give an update on kind of news stories and stuff like that, and I'll take on a couple of questions. Be just quite short format, just to try and get some content for you ahead of the games. If you're anything like me, you'll want to watch the majority of the games, I'm sure. And obviously, just finally, before we finish, a shout out for our patron. December on Planet FPL is free if you sign up before the end of the month. If you join us at advanced tier patron, you've got access to all the backlog of stuff, which obviously this week includes Talking Tactics. I've done a 20+ minute piece on concerns I have about Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. It's not a slight on either player, it's just structural issues that England have. And Talking Tactics have used footage from England's game with Germany in the Nations League to highlight that. And we produced a film yesterday where Nico had done some amazing work on putting together a film which I've narrated over, looking back on the 2002 World Cup. If you want to join an intermediate tier, it's a good time to go back and listen to the audiobook Goodbye to the Lane that I did, I want to say in March maybe, about Tottenham's final season in White Hart Lane, which is a 10-part series of a diary that I kept at the time. And obviously, if you just want to support the show, you can. And obviously, if Twitter dies, it would be great to get on our Slack channels. You've got access from my planner on Slack as well. And you can join in and support the show from as little as £3 a month. www.patreon.com/planetfpl. If you've got any questions, come and ask me publicly or privately. If anybody's got any World Cup fantasy questions that they don't understand from this stream, as I said, recommend following Andy, Let's Talk FPL, FPL Harry, the above average FPL boys. Ben Krellin's trying to get on the act and understand what's going on as well. Follow these big accounts. They'll be really, really helpful for you. If you've got any questions for me, tag me publicly is best rather than jumping in my DMs, because then I can answer those questions publicly so everybody else can see it. But that just leaves me to say thank you very much, everyone. If you are playing World Cup Fantasy, I wish you the very, very best of luck. And for the benefit of those listening to the audio podcast, cue music, please, man child.